Well, hello. Welcome back. We're back to, a continuation of the Lord of the Rings series. And this time we're on the Two Towers, which is the second installment in the Lord of the Rings. Now, where we left off is that Frodo has separated from the Fellowship of the Ring, which has already been broken. If you remember, Gandalf has disappeared along with the Balrog back in Moria. And now that Boromir has also died, protecting Merry and Pippin, who have been sequestered by the orcs that had ambushed them in the forest, or I should say as they were exiting the forest. Now we have, now we follow along Frodo and Sam. Now, part of the journey to Mount Doom, or Mordor, although their destination is Mount Doom, part of the journey involves this labyrinth of rocks, followed by it's a marshland, but it has its own history, which I won't go into, but it involved a big war that happened, and then they have to get to the gates of Mordor. Now, Sam and Frodo are doing their best at navigating through the rocks, but they are getting lost. They are going in circles. But Frodo does notice that they are being followed. They're being watched, and it's not by something that is intending good things. So it's not like it's a guardian or anything, but it's more like this eerie feeling that there's something out there that is waiting for an opportunity. Opportunity for what? Well, his only guess is that because he has the ring, if whoever's following them knows about the ring, then that's why they're being followed. As the night goes on and Frodo confides in Sam that they are being followed, they secretly plan a trap. Or not necessarily a trap, but what they do is that they come up with a plan, and when whoever was following them shows up and finally gets near them, they trap that, whoever was following them, and they start the interrogation. It comes to be that the creature that was following them, because it was a creature, was Gollum. Frodo had known about Gollum, thanks to Gandalf back at his home at the Shire, when they were talking about the ring and how Gandalf knew that it was the ring of power, the ring that belonged to Sauron. And from what Frodo knew, Gollum was a hobbit at one point, who, when he came into possession of the One Ring, the ring consumed his mind, and he lived in a natural life, very much like Bilbo, except that his life was extended far beyond that. And it came to the point where he no longer tolerated the light. He was so corrupted that he preferred the darkness. He no longer wanted the warmth. So rather than eating cooked food, which we all know that hobbits love food, Gollum would eat raw fish, would eat raw bunnies. Gollum would prefer like the icky taste, textures. He was really corrupted at his core because of the ring. And because of that, Frodo and Sam, better keep an eye on him. So rather than let him go, they have him come with them. Now, he doesn't tolerate what they use to bind him down, which is a rope that was given by the elves over in Lothlorien. So what ends up happening is that Frodo takes pity on him, makes him swear by the ring, the only thing that would bind him to his promise, that he would not attempt to go away, that he would help him. And the help is leading them to the gates of Mordor. And so they're on their journey, they're on their way. Back to the Broken Fellowship. Now it's only Legolas, Aragorn, and Gimli. And they have two possible routes they can take. They can either follow Frodo, or they can go after Merry and Pippin and save them from the orcs. They decide to go with the latter. They go chasing after the orcs in order to save Merry and Pippin, and off they're on their chase. In the movie, they do make this funny commentary with Gimli, saying that dwarves are natural born sprinters, not marathon runners. So it is funny how Aragorn and Legolas, they're keeping up in pace with each other, with speed and endurance, and Gimli is just struggling the whole time. It is a funny scene in the movie, but they do end up in the lands of the can't talk, Rohirrim. In other words, they're in the land of Rohan, which is very different from where they were. It's more like an open prairie, an open meadow, all the way, where there's few vegetation in between. There might be boulders here or there, but it's very barren. But they're following the orcs. They're struggling because the orcs seem to be running and seem to be at a speed, and they're outpacing them by leagues and leagues. It's almost as if they're being forced to go that distance. It's almost, and Aragorn, I don't remember if he says it in, or it might have been Legolas, but I don't remember if they say it in the book as well, or just in the movie. But they do mention that it's almost as if their master was using a whip behind them. That's how intense the orcs were traveling. Now, Merry and Pippin were also struggling because as they get back their consciousness, now the orcs that were carrying them basically put them down and have them run along with them. And you can guess the problem, beginning with hobbits being as short as they are, their legs are not as long, so they have to move faster than the orcs can just to keep up. And not just that, but they also don't have that same endurance, so now you have them, struggling to keep pace with them. And all the while, the orcs are taunting them, saying that if they don't hurry up, they're going to eat their legs because they don't need their legs, but they do need them alive in order to present them to Saruman. So it's a whole different thing. Oh, and by the way, just if that wasn't clear, the orcs weren't sent by Sauron, as was evident by the sign of the white hand on their crest, on their breastplates, on their shields, on their flag is the white hand, and the white hand is Saruman the White, who is also a wizard. However, in not like Gandalf, who was actually working towards destroying the ring, Saruman is actually helping Sauron get the ring back. But there is kind of like this, devious plot where he wants the ring for himself. So he's helping Sauron looking for the ring, but he's not intending on actually giving it back to Sauron. Now, that's a whole different plot, but we go back to Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn. They do manage to find people, and the people are riding horses and they're running along, and they draw their attention, and that's where they discover that things are not going as well as it seems in Rohan. Things are not going, they're not working. And so when they do manage to catch up with the orcs, and that's with the help of the Rohirrim, who point them where they last saw the orcs, which happened to, and this happens in the course of days, so it's not like they enter Rohan and then all of a sudden they find the orcs. They do spend a few days and a few nights, but when they finally are pointed out where they last saw the orcs, it's only because the Rohirrim had actually fought the orcs the night before. And now there's only carcasses, there's dead bodies, and they were burning the bodies, and all the debris and all the everything that was stripped away from the orcs. All of that was put to the side, and when they ask, "Have you seen hobbits?" they would be only children to your eyes. That is from the movie, but can't really say for sure if it's from the book as well. They do actually admit that they didn't see any hobbits or the people that they described, which is kind of a shame. But Aragorn does notice something. He notices that there's a scene where there was a struggle, and in the movie it goes back to the night before, where it shows that the night before the orcs had stopped for the night and were camping. And I was there, they were getting everything ready, and they were even about to eat their moldy bread. A fight broke out because they wanted to eat meat, and the obvious option to eat meat was, well, Merry and Pippin. But they need them alive. And so a fight broke out, and what ended up happening is that in the commotion, one of the orcs goes towards the hobbits and tries to eat them, tries to kill them. Now they do manage to escape. They manage to cut the ropes that were tying them down, and they run into the nearby forest. Now this forest is very special. It is known as Fangorn Forest, where it has trees that can talk, trees that whisper, trees that after centuries and centuries and of orcs cutting down for wood and burning them down, it's filled with hate and ill will for anyone who enters the forest. However, they didn't notice at that time, Merry and Pippin, so they're just running away. That's their only concern. The orc follows them in the forest, and they're only saved at the last minute by the help of a massive, what looks like to be a massive tree. Now, this is not a tree per se. This is a tree herder who presents himself as Treebeard. Treebeard is a tree herder, like I said. His job, or what he does, is that he takes care of the forest and makes sure that the trees can grow tall and strong. He doesn't believe them at first. He thinks that Merry and Pippin are orcs, smaller orcs. But they do manage to convince him that they're not orcs, they're hobbits. And Treebeard decides to call for an Entmoot, which is just another way of saying that it's a meeting with other Ents. That's the name of their race, Ents. In the Entmoot, they take an extremely long time. As Treebeard explained, that it takes a very long time to say anything in Old Entish. And so, by the time that night falls again, or, because a day has passed and it's already the following night, they agree and they settle that Merry and Pippin are indeed not orcs, and to write them down in some record that they have of the different races that exist. And that's shocking because Merry and Pippin were asking for help in order to fight against Saruman, but they took so long just to read that they're not orcs, that they're not the danger, so they're not going to kill them. It got them really mad. So instead, they are left behind with another Ent who happens to be... They say that he's quicker, that he's hastier, but, even his speech pattern is still slow, but not as slow as Treebeard and the other Ents. So, relatively speaking, he is he's quicker than Treebeard and the rest. Now, at any rate, they do, wait during the Ent meeting, the Entmoot, and once Treebeard appears and he says, "You know what? we've agreed that no, we're not going to help you with this war because it has nothing to do with us. We already have our own issues and problems that we have to deal with, and nobody is actually helping us either. So there's no reason for us to get involved in this mess. Well, Merry and Pippin are disappointed, but they understand and they agree to leave. But they agree that the best option is to exit through close to where Saruman is, because it's better for them. Because the closer they are, they're smaller, so the closer they are, they're not going to be seen, and it's not going to be expected. So it's going to be a much safer route for them to take. Treebeard agrees because it makes sense for them, not so much for him, who is huge as any other tree. But when they reach a clearing, they notice that it's just filled with burned down trees. Trees that Treebeard knew since they were saplings. Trees that Treebeard has been nourishing, taking care of. It was devastating for him. They were almost like his children. And the trees were just mercy. Sometimes you can't talk. That's one of these days for me. But there was no mercy in what he saw. All trees in that clearing were cut down, burned to ashes. He was angry, so angry that Treebeard he roared, or he did this call that called the other ants over to where they were, and after seeing the clearing without a single word, they agreed to just run forward and attack the Tower of Orthanc, the tower where Saruman was located. And they run, and they run, they fight, and they win. With all the remaining orcs in the tower, they were able to defeat Saruman. And Saruman really, it's more of an impasse because he doesn't want to accept defeat, so he locks himself in the tower. So that is not over yet, but going back to Frodo and Sam, they make it over across the labyrinth of rocks. They make it across the marshlands. Now they're on their way to the gates of Mordor. But they do see this band of men. And Frodo does wonder, well, who are these people? Gollum explains that these are people who have decided to join the dark forces. So these are really a group of evil men that should not see them. Otherwise, they're going to take the ring. So they agree, they sneak away. And in the movie, there is this other scene where Sam is kind of fighting over a rabbit or a hare. It's more like a hare, but in any case, he fights with Gollum because Gollum wants to just eat the bunny. He wants to eat the rabbit as it is, raw. And Frodo doesn't seem very well with the idea. I mean, he doesn't seem to be able to stomach the idea of eating it just like that. And Sam does his classic line where he decides to cook the rabbit and uses whatever he has at hand, but complains that, oh, if we only had taters. And Gollum asks, taters? Taters? What are taters, precious? And Sam just responds with, taters. Potatoes. Yeah, that's a classic line, but yeah, that is a fun scene to watch in the movie. So they do make it over to the gates, and right before Frodo can run towards the open gates, because they just admitted this group of men that were going into Mordor, Sam and Gollum stop him. And they decide that isn't the best course of action. And Gollum offers an alternative, saying that in another place, there is a stairway that leads up a cliff and leads down a dark tunnel through which they can get to the other side without being seen. Now, Frodo and Sam are kind of off put with this because why didn't he say it before? And Gollum just dismisses that whole notion, saying that, well, you only told me to lead you to the gates. You never actually told me to lead you inside. Mordor, which, fair enough. But Gollum does have a plan of his own. When you see the film, and it's kind of hard to convey just like this as a review, but Gollum has this double personality where you have Smeagol, who's the nicer part, the one that wants to please everybody, the one who is easily hurt, and then you have this darker side of him, which is Gollum. So Gollum has this plan involving the Dark Tunnel, which is when he'll presumably attack Frodo and Sam, take the ring, run away with the ring, and leave them to their own demise. Alright, now we're going back to Legolas, Aragorn, and Gimli. So once they figure out that both Merry and Pippin had gone into the forest, and that the forest is Fangorn Forest, they decide that they're just going to go in after them. They do, but when they go into the forest, they do find this white figure who they thought was Saruman. And it turns out that it was no one other than Gandalf. However, Gandalf was no longer in the gray robe. Gandalf no longer seemed like the gray-haired wizard they knew. He was now Gandalf the White. And he explains that when he was battling the Balrog, he defeated the Balrog, but his mission was not complete. And so he was returned back to life. And he was brought back not as Gandalf the Grey, the wandering wizard. He was now Gandalf the White, which they don't explain it in the movie, but there are different wizards in Middle-earth. So it's not like they're like a different race. It's only just a few individuals. You have the brown wizard, you have the green wizards, who are brothers. You have I want to say there was another one, like a blue wizard, but I'm not sure about that. You had Gandalf the Grey, and then you have Saruman, who is the white wizard. And the white wizard is the strongest of the wizards, followed by Gandalf the Grey, and so forth. Not much is known about the wizards, because again, there's not like a race that populates and have other wizards. They're just wizards that all of a sudden appeared in Middle-earth, and no one knows what they do, no one knows what they can do, no one knows anything about them. Having said that, after explaining his story, Gandalf explains that Merry and Pippin are well taken care of. They're actually with Treebeard, the Ent. And they make their way over to the Tower of Orthanc, again, which is now under control of the Ents. They meet up again with Merry and Pippin. Gimli has this tearful reunion with Merry and Pippin, but he also is mad at them because when they arrive, they're already smoking, I forget the name. It's some sort of weed, but anyway, they do fireweed. No, okay, I'm not going to try to remember the name, but they were smoking, and Gimli says, "Well, hey, we're worried about you. We're going through all this trouble, and you're just here smoking this." And they just laugh it off, and they offer him kind of like to reconcile. They offer him a pipe, and they all smoke together, and they're having fun with the reunion. And they decide to continue on their way. They go on their way to Rohan. Now, when they reach Rohan, the actual kingdom, they notice that the king is acting kind of weird. Not just that, but they have news that Eowyn, or Éomer, I should say, Éomer is the captain of the Rohirrim, who they met out in the field, the ones who had fought against the orcs and told them where they last fought them. He finds out that they find out that Éomer was banished by the king, and they wonder why. Why would he banish his nephew? And then they ask about the prince, but the prince has already passed away. And the only other family member there is Éowyn, that would be the king's niece. And they find out that he's been acting really strange. Gandalf, when he approaches the king, that's when he realizes that he's actually being possessed by Saruman. So he's able to, well, I wouldn't say exercise, but he does get rid of Saruman from the king, and he is able to get him back to his senses. But the king has been away in his mind for so long that he learns that his son passed away. Éomer was nowhere to be found because he had been banished, and now they're in trouble. And so they decide to go to, well, it's this kind of fortress called Minas Tirith. Minas Tirith? No, not Minas Tirith. I'm wrong. The name is Helm's Deep. And the reason is because they knew that now that Saruman has been banished, and now that Wormtail has also been banished. No, Wormtail? Wormtongue. Yeah, I think it's Wormtongue. He is obviously going to come back with the orcs because he's going back to his master, Saruman. And that's what they do. They actually go to Helm's Deep. They are attacked along the way by the wolves of Isengard. They make it past, but Aragorn does fall off a cliff during a struggle with one of the orcs and one of the wolves. Once they reach Helm's Deep, they prepare to fight, and fight they do, but they do realize that they're against a massive wave of orcs and Uruk-hai. Now, Uruk-hai, just really quickly, Saruman did some experiments where he kind of corrupted the orcs, and now it's this strange mixture that it's now a different race altogether. The Uruk-hai are stronger, more intelligent, they endure more, they're stronger, faster, all that. Now, they are pleasantly surprised because they are short-handed. I mean, they need more hands. They need more people. They are very surprised when a group of elves come by. Not just any elves, but they're an army of elves. And, well, they're there to actually help them, just like they used to in the past. So they fight. In the movie, it's very funny that Legolas and Gimli have their competition of who kills the most. And, that's always like those are always fun scenes in the series altogether because they always compete against one another. They barely make it out alive, but as they're being, defeated, or as they're about to be defeated, because they do manage to break into Helm's Deep through the different walls, and they're at their door, Aragorn and the king decide to, seize the day, as it will, and run out. And at that same exact time, as the sun was going up, they find that the Rohirrim are there. They're there to help them. They're back. They rush in their horses, on their horses, to fight along their side, and they finally manage to defeat the orcs. Now, this was an impressive scene that I can't encapsulate with just a verbal review. So I'll just say that it was in a spectacular scene. Like, this battle sequence was spectacular. even at that time, you don't know how impressive that scene was. Like now, today, a regular computer can do it, probably. But at that time, in 2000, not even 2002, because that's when it was released. But, 2001, 2000, 1999, like that was impressive technology for the time. Now, going back to kind of Frodo and Sam, as they make their way, they are caught by a group of men. And they're actually caught by Faramir, who happens to be Boromir's brother. Now, Frodo did not know that Boromir had passed away. So when Faramir starts to interrogate him, saying, well, if you knew him, you can tell me how he died. And Frodo really, it hits him and says, well, no, I do not know how he died. But I'm sorry that he passed away. Faramir decides to kind of keep them with him just because he doesn't know what's their true purpose or what's going on. So he wants to find out more about them because he finds them strange. Especially because they hadn't been able to capture Gollum, but they were sure that there was something sneaky about them. So they end up, well, following along Faramir. Now, Faramir's men do eventually find Gollum, and they're about to kill him until Frodo kind of speaks up. He says, well, no, let me just get to him. I'll talk to him, but don't hurt him. They keep their deal. They don't hurt him, but they do time him up. And Gollum very understandably feels betrayed because he only saw Frodo and then all of a sudden he was tied down by this group of men. And Frodo has to tell him the truth, has to tell Boromir that the reason he's there, the reason that he's in their land is that he's going over to Mount Doom to destroy the ring. Faramir is very much tempted to bring back the ring to his father. Because as Boromir had intended, to use the ring against Sauron, well, Faramir also wants to use the ring as a weapon. That obviously won't work, but, extreme circumstances, they needed something to protect their people, which is understandable. Now, an event happens where there's this battle at one of the seas that they're trying to keep, that the orcs are invading. And that's when Faramir kind of they have a heart-to-heart. Well, Faramir and Frodo. And this understanding leads to Faramir to let Frodo go with the ring because he knows what's at stake and he understands what has to be done. But Frodo also understands what's at stake, not just for him, but truly understand what's at stake for all the other races. It's not just that Sauron is going to be in power and that's a bad thing, but there's actual consequences that people will die. There will be genocide. There will be people that no longer exist. It's not just about them. It's about everybody. And so they're on their way, Frodo, Sam, and Gollum. Smeagol is obviously very hurt about having been captured the way he was. He feels betrayed, so now Gollum takes over, and they are going to put their plan in action. Get Frodo and Sam killed, take away the ring. Now back over to, just very briefly, to Merry, Pippin, and the rest. Not just Merry and Pippin, but Gandalf and Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas and etc. etc. The King of Rohan doesn't want to help Gondor because, as he said, when they were in need, where was Gondor? Now, why would they be expected to help someone that didn't help them when they needed to? So they leave it to rest, and for now, that's all they can do. But the thing is, Over at the Tower of Orthanc, there is something that happens. Because remember, the hobbits weren't there yet. The Merry and Pippin weren't at Helm's Deep just yet. But something happens where Saruman throws something out of the tower. It was this sphere, this cold sphere, an orb, which Pippin gets curious about, picks up, and sees this massive eye and feels this pain and feels like he's being interrogated. Gandalf, when he realizes it, he knocks it away and gets angry because why did Pippin pick up something that he didn't know if it was dangerous or not? They didn't agree that it's best if they go over to Gondor and that he takes Pippin with him. After all, he's a fool of a took. He is probably going to cause much problems. So he takes him away. That, and also because since the enemy, Sauron, has already seen him, he's probably going to be thinking that he is the one that has the ring. So the party is no longer going to be safe. And he leaves. And that's where we're going to stop with this second part, the Two Towers. Just really briefly, because I feel that this wasn't really well explained in the movie. I know because I've read the book and I've read Similarian, so I already know about this, but I feel as good as the movie is, there are things that are not that explained. And so one of the things that weren't explained, although I would say that it was explained in the extended edition, was that the Ents are not just all male, because when you see them, they look like male trees. But there's also Ent wives. The problem is that because the Ents were so engrossed in nurturing the trees and doing their work, the Ent wives felt neglected, and so they left them. And there is a song that is about the lament of the Ents and not knowing where the Entways had gone. So that is one thing. It's very minor, doesn't affect the story. But this is kind of like a key thing that I think wasn't explained in the movie. The reason why it's called the Two Towers is that there's two towers, obviously. One in Isengard, which is where Saruman is, and that's the Tower of Orthanc. Then you have another tower. That tower is in the land of Mordor, where you see the big eye. That is the tower, the second tower. The purpose and the importance of these two towers is that they have these orbs. These orbs, and I forget what they're called specifically, were used to communicate between the two towers. The reason being is that they were control points. That tower that's in Mordor was used to kind of keep an eye on Sauron and the orcs and all them in old days. And to quickly communicate if a problem was arising, they would use the orb, talk to the other tower, and that way from there they can call the Rohirrim, they can call the people from Gondor, they can rally up the necessary forces to control the dark creatures and put them, to limit them. And it's as a quick response because they are quite a bit of a distance away from tower to tower. That is kind of like the importance. The reason why it was dangerous what Pippin did with the orb, and this is why he could see Sauron, is because Sauron has the other orb. Saruman, that's how he communicated with Sauron. But now that Pippin touched the orb, Sauron knows one hobbit. And he knows that it is a hobbit who has the ring. So naturally, Sauron's going to think, oh, this is the one hobbit that has the ring. Now we have to go after this particular hobbit. That's why Gandalf has to leave with Pippin so that the rest won't be involved in any unnecessary battles or won't be ambushed later on. So that is kind of a key thing that I feel that the movie didn't explain. But other than that, this movie was filled with battles. And it was just battle sequences that were impressive. I mean, again, you have to take into consideration that in the late 1990s and in the early 2000s, this was released in 2002. So we're talking about this is more than 2 decades ago. And the technology that they had is not the same as today. It's impressive what they managed. It's impressive everything they did. And it's so well done that even if you watch it today, it doesn't seem so far-fetched. It doesn't seem so CGI or doesn't seem as too fake. It's an impressive piece of art. And this is one of the things that impresses people who watches The Lord of the Rings. All the movies have beautiful backgrounds. New Zealand is natural, it's beautiful. The costumes, the props, everything was well done. The characters are well developed. The story, well, I'll get into all of that. At the end, I'll go over how my overall impressions. But just know that this second movie was amazing. I have to say that between 3 films, Two Towers has to be my favorite of the three movies. And that's all I have to say. All right? Have you seen this movie? Have you not seen it? Have you read the book? What do you think? What is your favorite scene? Just answer anything you would like in the comments section. And that's about it. That's all for this video. Take care. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And remember, be kind to those around you because you never know what they are going through. Always remember that. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.